Well, hi there, Nijat. Good evening. Now, finally, we're going to have our new class today, and it's going to be about line graph. Today, we'll be discussing line graph together, and it's a little harder than the previous one, so I would highly recommend to listen to this one very carefully and listen to it many times and try to understand the points. Especially the movements between lines are very important, so you have to understand the movements in order to demonstrate the correct curves in your lines. So better listen carefully, and if you have any question while listening to the video, then please write it down or make a video and send it to me, okay? Alright, let's start a new class right now. So as I said before, we're going to start with the line graph, and your material is almost ready, so I'm going to explain what are we going to learn today and what we should use, how to write a line graph, and we're going to write a band 8-9 sample answer for the line graph, so that it could be easier for you to write it again by yourself. Well, in this tutorial, we're going to answer and explain in detail that what a line graph is and how to give band 8-9 answer to a line graph and a graph question, and close look on the lines movements, and these are called trends at the same time, and study them, plus special tips for higher score in writing a line graph. So before we start anything, as you can see, there is a line graph down below here. This is a sample question, but you don't need to read the question right now. As you can see, there are some lines shown in the graph. This is the graph itself, and these parts are called movements or trends. So we're going to discuss these trends and try to find out that how the movement of a trend goes in the line graph. So line graphs can be used to show how information or data can change over time, and obviously they have an x-axis, which is the horizontal axis, and they have the y-axis, which is the vertical axis. Usually the x-axis, horizontal axis, shows the time period, and the y-axis shows what is being measured. So on the horizontal axis, there are almost always numbers presenting on the horizontal axis, and it mostly represents the years between years that is being measured by an item or something. And on the vertical axis, you can see what is being measured. For example, in this example, it's all about population in the state of Oregon by county. So county means the region of the state between 1940 and 2000. Okay, so there are about 60 years of gap here. Here on the horizontal axis you can see the year, and here on the vertical axis you can see the population unit shown on the vertical axis. So population unit is being measured in the vertical axis. That's as always the same. Most of the time, almost all the time, the horizontal axis presents the years, and the vertical axis presents numbers that are being measured in the line graph. So line graphs can be used when you're plotting data that have picks ups or troughs and downs. In other words, they highlight trends, which means shows the movement of the unit that is being measured through the years. So it's actually very simple. You just have to know how to describe line movement in your essay. Without further ado, let's start to learn our topic on the following example below. Here is a sample question for line graph task 1. A line graph, so let's read the question first. If for almost all IELTS task 1s, what we should do, we should read the question card before anything else and try to understand what is the information all about, and then take a close look at the line graph itself, or if it's pie chart, then pie chart itself, and try to understand what kind of extra information have been given to us on the line graph or on the graph itself. So it says the line graph below shows the household recycling rates in 3 different countries between 2005 and 2015. So as usual, the question is summarizing the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So this is about regional household recycling rates in 3 countries. So after I read my question very carefully 2 times, maybe 3 times, in order to understand it better, I use SVOA method, and I found out what is the subject, what is the verb, what is the object, and what are the adverbials. Why I do that? Because it helps me to find out what is the key point in the question, and mostly the key points are objects in the question, just like in this one, and it kind of ease our understanding on the question. So this is about the regional household recycling rates. So before anything and everything, let's examine our cue card. So as I wrote before here, you have to read the topic carefully, because it may contain some key information that must be that has to be mentioned in the introduction part, or maybe the overall part. To understand what's really going on in the graph, you need to read question maybe 2 or 3 times. So let's just divide it into subject, verb, and object. Let's see what we have in the question. So when we paraphrase it, it'll be easier for us to paraphrase the phrases easily. So the line graph is the subject, and as we know, it will never change. You will never change the name of the graph or task 1 question. If it's the line graph, it is the line graph. If it's the pie chart, it's the pie chart. There, you don't need to paraphrase the name of the graph. The line graph below shows, and the second one is obviously the verb as usual, and you can paraphrase the verb as much as you can, and you know many options and alternatives for the verbs that you can use as the verb of the sentence in task 1 IELTS. So instead of shows, you can use represent, you can use depicts, you can use show, all kinds of other alternatives or synonyms. So here, after verb, what we have, we ask the question what, if it's the transitive verb. The question what, the answer to the question what is the household recycling rates. So it is the object, which means it is the key point of our question card. We are going to talk about household recycling rates. So it must be paraphrased if you can. But if you can, at least change the word and find a synonym for the object so that you won't repeat it again. But as I said in our previous class, that you better paraphrase the title of your graph 2 or 3 times before you start writing your essay, because it will help you to put those paraphrased phrases into your sentences as quick as it's possible. So the household recycling rates is the object in our question, and we have in 3 different countries where we have place adverbial, and between 2005 and 2015 we have time adverbial. Now all we have to do, we have to summarize the information according to the structure of task 1 essay. So what is the topic, so which is like household recycling rates. Object in the cue card almost and always is the topic of the question. We have place adverbial, 3 different countries. So I go down and check 3 different countries according to my question, because I analyze my question and the graph at the same time to find out basic information before I go for detailed information. So there are 3 different countries. UK is one of them, France and Germany. Okay, I got the vision. And we have time adverbial, which is between 2005 and 2015. So I told you before, if you can find the words for periods of time. For example, as you can see, we have 10 years of gap between 2005 and 2015, and 10 years is a word in English, which is, and you can use a half a century as we explained in the previous class. Okay, so you can use the word annual or century or decade for 10 years. So if you can find them, definitely use them, because this is a good way of analyzing your graph, especially in the overall part of task 1. Then the line graph itself. So 3 different countries. So as we read the question, we do it like this. So we're examining the question card and read the topic really carefully in 2-3 times so that you understand it better. Find out what is the subject, verb, object, adverbial is, and write it down, and then go to the graph itself and try to analyze the graph thoroughly. So we have 3 different countries in the graph. It is shown UK, France, and Germany. I'm writing it down, and the time period is between 2005 and 2015, which means in the period of 10 years, and it equals a decade. So using time definers is really worth, trust me, which means you are really good at analyzing a graph. And then the vertical axis, it shows percentages. Here we go. Vertical axis shows the percentages, and horizontal axis shows the years. So now we have all the briefly summarized information about our graph. So now, in the last 2 IELTS Task 1 essays, we mentioned that the structure for higher score should be listed the following. And it's easier to write your essay according to this Task 1 structure. And so we have 4 parts in IELTS Task 1, and so far we've used this we've used the structure for almost 3 different tasks in IELTS Task 1. And the first part is introduction, which means your first paragraph is your introduction. Mostly it's only 1 sentence, a single sentence, but you can write 2 sentences, but not more than 2 sentences. And what you do here, you introduce the graph to the readers. And the second paragraph or second sentence, it's an overview, general overview, and it's always start with the word overall. So what you do here, you describe general features, and the third paragraph is your the rest of the paragraphs are is your features, and feature 1, feature 2, feature 3, which means in the feature paragraph you describe specific features according to your graph. So of course here you have to know how to deeply analyze your graph so that you can write the specific features about your graph. Now let's learn how to do it. But before we learn how to do it, let's find out what are the don'ts of line graph. And actually it kind of refers to all previous 3 task 1 questions. So do not write your own opinion. That's not allowed. You have to describe only what's in the diagram, and don't give a conclusion to your essay, because this is not a task 1 essay. This is only task 1, and the conclusion is kind of your personal idea or thought. So writing a personal opinion is not a good thing in task 1. So all you have to do, what you see in the picture, you have to copy it using words in your essay. Okay, now we'll take a look at each part of the answer. So let's write the introduction, and after the introduction, the overall, and then the features of your graph. So the first graph of your answer should be an introduction, as always. And for the introduction, you need to simply paraphrase the topic in your own words. Just like in the previous task 1 questions. So you just have to write 1 or 2 sentences to say what your graph shows and for what period of time. This is actually another explanation of paraphrasing. And if you don't know how to paraphrase, or if you are not good at paraphrasing, please go back to read Paraphrasing the Object material that I've sent you. It's very important for task 1 and task 2. Well, so there are some useful tips that I would like to share with you. We've been talked about paraphrasing in our previous classes, as I said before. Please go check that. And there's also a material called The Art of Paraphrasing. So if you read that, if you understand that, I can actually send you some exercises about paraphrasing the object and the art of paraphrasing. Then you will easily paraphrase any sentence or any phrase possibly come on your way when writing your introduction or any essay in IELTS. Okay, this is the sample introduction that I did for you. I had many options, so I go for the first option. So here how I did that. So the line graph is the subject. Before I paraphrase, again, I go up to the question card and I check what is subject, verb, object, and adverbial. After I find out them, then I'll start paraphrasing each part of the sentence one by one, but we don't have to change the subject in the question card. So the line graph is the title of this of the essay, and you keep the line graph, and then you paraphrase the rest of the sentence, especially the verb. So the verb on the question is show. So what I chose illustrate. So you can choose something different. There are about 20 verbs, 25 verbs that you can use. Also, I listed those verbs down below in this material. You can also read them from here, but you also have it in your material called Paraphrasing the Object. So the line graph illustrates, I go up to the question. Here we go. The household recycling rates in 3 different countries between 2005 and 2015. So what I did here is simply the regional household recycling rates. So what I did, regional household recycling rates is the paraphrasing of actually it's almost the same. I didn't change it because I don't need to change it. Sometimes there are some phrases or sentences that you may not be able to change because you may not be able to find a synonym for that word, or just you can't just explain it to yourself so that you can write it in your answer. The best way to do that, if you really want to change the phrase that seems a little more difficult to you, then you can just observe the idea of the phrase and write it in and put it down into another words and write it in your own way by keeping the main idea. So which means in here I did a little bit of change in option 2. What I did, I chose to root this household recycling rates in the regions of UK. Instead of saying the regional household recycling rates, I chose to write household recycling rates in the regions of these countries. So actually the adjective, if you have a very complex combination of object, which means including it includes 3-4 words, then you can just easily find the adjective and make it adverbial, or you can just find if you have ing word and make it verb and make it again adjective or noun, just like that, like household recycling rates in the regions of UK. What I did here, I found the word regional, it's adjective, and I just turn it into noun. You can do this, or you can just keep it like that. It doesn't mean that you have to paraphrase everything that you see on your question. And here, instead of saying in 3 different countries, I chose to write the names of the countries like this: in the UK, France, and Germany from 2005 to 2015. Actually, it's the same in here. It says between 2005 and 2015. I did a little bit of change by writing from 2005 and to 2015. And it must be there because you can't say for a decade, or you can just say for a decade from 2005 and 2015, but you cannot just say for a decade because the numbers must be shown in the introduction. Whatever is in the question must be paraphrased and must be shown. If there is like a exact information, definite information, must be shown in your introduction part. So this is our paraphrasing the question. So this is the introduction. That's all, and you can also like divide it into 2 sentences so that you can explain it better, but it's not recommended. It's recommended only if you can paraphrase subject, verb, object, adverbial, none of them. Okay, and especially object and adverbials. Then it would be better to separate into 2 sentences to explain your idea. Okay, as you can see, I haven't changed the subject. I changed the object. I paraphrased the verb. I kept the object in the first option, and the second option I did a little bit of change, and I changed the adverbial and also time, the place adverbial and time adverbial at the same time. So please do not miss anything from the question. You've done this before. You've done some. You've missed some parts, some important information in your question. Paraphrase question. So please don't do that. If you have numbers, just write down and paraphrase the numbers, but numbers must be there. Names must be there. So you cannot just miss them in your paraphrase introduction sentence. Well, easy peasy breezy. This is your introduction, and next part is overview. After the introduction, let's move on to the next paragraph, which is the most important paragraph in your task 1. IELTS. So this is the overview paragraph. And as we learned before, in the overview paragraph is a paragraph that contains all the key information from the graph. Not the details, but the key information. A graph or a pie chart or a bar chart contains key information and some details. So key information is just kind of an overall overview of your paragraph, of your graph. So maybe a pie chart or bar chart or line graph. Then in your overview, do not write the details, no dates, no numbers, no percentages, but only the key information, just general trends. So let's look at the graph and see the key features. So you normally have 2 to 4 key features in your graph. So, and obviously it kind of shows how many feature paragraphs you're going to have. If you have 2 features, you're going to have 2 paragraphs. If you have 4 key features, you're going to have 4 paragraphs. But you can easily keep them in 3 paragraphs. But it's better if you have more features, and then you have more paragraphs. So as we can see in the graph, UK and Germany rates. So in overview, obviously we have to find the bigger portion. If it's a pie chart, we have to find a bigger portion, smaller portion, and which means that what made the change to an upper level, what didn't change, or what decreased or shortened. Here is the same. And as we can see in the graph, UK and Germany is the green line, UK is the blue line, and the France is the red line. UK and Germany rates went up. So the blue line goes up, and the green line also goes up, and which means their rates went up. While France, on the other hand, it's a red line, went down. So these are the key information. We have 3 key information according to our countries, because we have 3 lines. Mostly in the line graph, key informations are lines, and which means the lines represents countries, or I don't know, some other stuff according to your question. So these are your key features. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add this to my overview paragraph. Actually, the vocabulary I chose to use here was attached down below. So now in upcoming minutes I will explain it to you, but you have to learn all this vocabulary by heart. I mean, they're not much, maybe 5, 6, 7 vital words for you to learn and use in your line graph essay, not only in overview, but also in the future, you're gonna need those vocabulary words. So here's the overall that I wrote for you. So the recycling rates of the UK and Germany showed a steady but significant rise. So the word steady and significant rise, which was highlighted in the red color, are the definite explanation of the movement. So as you can see, they have steady movement for about 5 to 6 years, and they have a little change starting from 2011 to 2015. It's also a steady movement. Steady movement means there are not many trends in your line graph, in your line movement. So, but it's also a big significant rise, because when you look at the beginning of the period, you can see in 2005 it was 20%, and 2015 is almost 50% to 60%, which means there is a significant rise of about 30 to 40% increase have been reported in the UK and Germany's cycling rates. So that's a significant rise. Now I will give you an explanation of this vocabulary that you can use in your overall and future paragraphs. So the UK and Germany showed a steady but significant rise over the period. As I said before, in your overview paragraph, you cannot write any detail, which means you cannot write percentages or years or names, or you can write names but no numbers should be there over the period, while the percentages of recycled waste in France experience a downward trend. So experience a downward trend is also one of the vocabulary, one of the words that we can use for task 1 vocabulary, especially for line graph. It's also in this material. So downward trend and upward trend, there are also many other synonyms for this words, so that you can learn them by heart and just use them fast if you need to use them in your writing. So this is how we write the overall, and there are general trends of the graph, and but no percentage. And as you can see, we have 3 features. So in the overall, we have, which means we have 3 countries. And there are some general trends of the graph, but there are no percentage or no data or no number we have written in the overview paragraph. The illustrated red words, as I said before, are from the vocabulary of IELTS Task 1. Well, so now let's study line movements and learn the vocabulary of it. So check the video and the material at the same time in order to comprehend everything better. Now it's time for key features. We have done the introduction paragraph, which was only 1 sentence, and the overview sentence. And now it's we are writing our key features of our line graph. Well, so in order to write your key features, first you have to look at your graph, find the key features and note them down somewhere nearby, not on your paper. That's how you learn it. But when you are in a mock exam, then you will not be given any paper. You have to keep them in your mind, and you have to write them quickly on your paper. Because you have only 20 minutes. So you should divide your paragraphs according to increasing trends or decreasing trends. That's what I do all the time. Mainly paragraph 1 is about increasing trends. Second paragraph shows decreasing trends. And you can collect the data. And if there is a steady movement, you can just describe them from the decreasing trends up to the increasing trends. So you can collect the data by country or by similar trend. But keep in mind that attached to this lesson you can find a vocabulary explained for a line graph. Since you know the vocabulary, all you have to do is just examine the graph carefully and try not to miss anything from the graph and find all the useful information. One of your previous essays that you've done, that you did before, there were some missed information. Actually, those were one of the most significant information that you should have put in your essay, but you've missed them. So try not to do that again, and for that, examine your graph very, very carefully. So as I said before, let's collect the data by country and by similar trends, which means now all we have to talk about are is the numbers. So the percentages according to the year. So in 2005, the UK was between 30% for 40%, and then it went up to 60% at the end of the period. So this is how I did it. So in 2005, the recycling rates of the UK and Germany, which was the blue line and the green line, UK and Germany, these two lines at the beginning of the period, which means in 2005, were nearly 35% and 20% respectively. Respectively means, in the subject I mentioned the UK first and the Germany second. And the second part I said 35% and 20% respectively, which means the first one goes for first percentage. UK is 35%, Germany is 20%. So in 2005, which is in the beginning of the period, Germany and the UK and Germany were to 35% and 20% respectively. So I use the adverbial nearly. It's also written down below in your vocabulary part. So if your data is not accurate, then you should use nearly, approximately, about, roughly. So you can see many more down below in your vocabulary list. So please learn them and also use them, but do not repeat one word second time because it's not good. It's just going to cut your score. So in 2005, the recycling rates of the UK and Germany were nearly 35% and 20% respectively. Respectively is a good word. I just explained what it is. And now I go for Germany for the beginning of the period. Mostly we start explaining our graph from the beginning of the period to the end of the period. So the beginning of the period was the year 2005 and the end of the period was the year 2015. So we have to mention all the years and all the movements that are going on in the graph. So Germany's rate, here is the Germany's rate, increased sharply over the period of time, but I just want to mention in 2011 it has a little slightly less increase than the years before. So I just describe it like this. Germany's rate increased sharply throughout the period, exceeding France's rate in 2009. There you go. They have in 2009 they have a cross over here. So crosses are very important for the line movement, for describing the line movement, because if you see any cross among your lines, which you can see a cross between UK and France in 2008, it's almost 2008, and actually at the beginning of 2019, and you can see another cross that happened in 2009 between Germany and France. So the crosses are really important, and that should be definitely mentioned in your essay. That's what I did, like this. Exceeding France's rate, exceed means go over. In 2009, as you can see, France is going down, all the way down, and it has a little increase movement in 2013 up to 2015. Here they have a cross. So exceeding, which means that it goes over it, and it increased in 2009, and reaching almost 60% in the end of the period. So as you can see, in 2015, it reached about 50%. It's not exactly 60%, but it's about 60%. But France, UK rates, as you can see, it's a little over than 60%. So if it's not 60%, do not use that is 60%. Use the words adverbials like nearly, approximately, about, or some other synonyms for that. In the meantime, the percentage of recycled waste in the UK grew to 40%, as you can see, starting from 2005 up to 2010. It grew of about 5% up to 40%. And when you describe your line movement, your trends in your graph, then if you have a steady movement, that definitely has to be in your sentence, in your explanation. As you can see, from 2007 to 2009, there's a steady movement in the UK's recycling rates. So I put it in my sentence like this. In the meantime, the percentage of recycled waste in the UK grew up to 40%, starting from 35%. Actually, I mentioned that it was 35% in the first sentence, so that's why I didn't use 35% again. I just used it grew to or up to 40% in 2007, then it remained steady until 2009. So remain steady, instead of using remain steady, you can use some other alternatives that was listed down below. So if you use it once, if you have two steady movements, then don't use steady or remain second time, use something different. So from 2007 and 2009, UK rates had a steady movement, remained steady, and okay, and then during 2019 and 2011, it experienced a rapid surge to more than 50%. Here, starting from 2009 to 2011, it has the highest increase in this period of time. In this decade, it has the sharpest increase between 2009 and 2011. And then it has a little kind of had a little less increase till 2015, and I also had it in it. Surge also means increase. This is one of the words for the trend, the words that we can use for the trend. It's also listed down below. You have also, the one word has a noun option, and at the same time it has a verb option. So in IELTS and academic English, it's better to write a noun phrase instead of a verb phrase. So experience is a really nice word to explain the movement of your line. So it experienced a rapid surge to more than 50% and continued with a gradual increase to 60% in 2015. So this is a gradual increase. It's also a good word. So its synonyms also down there. So just got them. So this movement is called gradual, sharp increase, steady movement, little increase like gradual increase, or surge, you can say. So the movements are different in your line. Actually, the UK rates had the most had the biggest trends in this period of time. So it has sharp decreases and increases, and it also has some steadiness in the movement throughout the time. So, and the good one here is the easiest one is France, because it just decreased gradually, and in 2013 it has a little sharp increase in the rate of recycling in the UK. So, and now as the second trend of my graph, I chose to write the highest numbers of my line graph. So in early 2005, the recycling rate of finance and recycling rate of France was about 50%. It was actually exactly 50%. You can see it in the map. Okay, so, and you can do this. You can just put the percentages between, using brackets. You can just put them inside a bracket and keep it there. It's okay. And if you say it was the highest or it was the lowest, after saying highest and the lowest, you can just write the number in the brackets. Was the highest among these three countries at the beginning of the period. That was the highest one by 50%. However, it dramatically declined to 30% in 2013. As you can see, from 50% it came down to 30% in 2013, and starting from 2013, France recycling rate was starting from 2013. It dramatically a growth of 10% experienced in 2015 in the recycling rates of France. But France recycling rate was the lowest at the end of the period, because the other two lines went higher above the France rates. So actually, it's really easy to find to describe the movements of the lines in the graph. All you have to do is just learn the vocabulary and just take a close and attentive look at your graph to find out all the details. And you shouldn't miss any detail and any movement. If you miss any movement, that's actually bad for your overall score. So they may give you a less score if you miss big trends in your line movement. Well, what actually affects to your score also is your grammar and your vocabulary. I don't think you're going to have a problem with the vocabulary because you have enough power of vocabulary to describe your word power and describe your sentences, your ideas. So, and also one more time, if you start your sentence, your first sentence with past simple, then you should continue all the sentences. You should write down all the sentences in past continuous in the following sentences. So if you start with a present perfect, then you should continue with the present perfect. You shouldn't change the tense form of the sentences in task 1. Mostly it's past simple, so better to write past simple and continue that, follow that order. Well, now let's take a look at how to describe trends in the line graph. Now we have a couple of vocabulary for this. Let's take a look at this vocabulary and let's learn this vocabulary. So you have to learn this vocabulary by heart, because when you start writing your essay, you're going to have only 20 minutes to finish it up. So having a useful vocabulary right side of your mind is very useful to write your sentences as quick as you can. So now there are a couple of alternative descriptions using different verbs, nouns, adverbs, etc. that will definitely help you on your IELTS graph writings. It's inevitable to understand how a line moves in a graph. It's almost the heart of the graph. The movement of a line is called a trend, as I said before. And to get a good band score, you must show the examiner a range of different words to show upward or downward trends as well as key features. So there's also steady movements. Also there's a vocabulary for steady movements at the same time. So below are lists of verbs, adverbs, and adjectives written and explained in this video, as well to describe a line graph. So a line in the graph either moves upward, downward, and as well as it may remain steady. So I will make another video on my whiteboard about this. I will show you how the line moves in the graph and how can we describe it with the right, correct vocabulary. So their upward trend, their downward trend, and I wrote down some verbs and some adjectives and adverbials about them. So you can see that in the next video. But by the time I send that video, please learn these things, these vocabulary, and there are also sentences about each for each word so that you can understand them better. And please take a close look at how we can use this of or about this preposition with the percentages or numbers, and that will help you a lot too. Here you go. You can see there's a title of downward trend and the verbs, and also the nouns following adjectives and adverbials. Nouns are a lot more important. As you can see, I said in our essay, I said a reduction or decrease. You can use as many alternatives as you can, like free fall. You can use a fall, decrease, reduction, downward trend or tendency, a decline, drop, a slide, collapse, downfall, a plunge, anything that you can. And each word here has its own explanation in the sentence, and I'm going to make the other video on the whiteboard showing how they move and how you can use them. Also, as I said before, there are some vocabulary for steadiness. Steadiness means değişmezlik. So it remains steady, you can say, or constant, or the same, or the stable, or the static, unchanged, or just you can use the word leveled out, level off, prevail, consistency, reach the plateau, and many more. So please learn this vocabulary after I send you the explanation. But if I could make it for tomorrow, that's great. But if I can, just study this vocabulary for the next class. I'll just explain it on the video. Well, what else we have here? Yeah, it's all the vocabulary. Also here, date, months, and years. So how can we use dates, months, and years? How can we use multiple choices for dates, months, and years? So in the question we had from 1990 or from 2005 to 2015. So you can just say starting from 2005 or commencing from 2005. It's another word for the start. And you can say between 2005 and 2015. And after 2005, you can just use these words. And when you say in, please do not misuse this. So with the months, we use in. With days, we use on. So here also check these things. I know it's easy. These things are easy, but just check them. Or you can just say with a period of 10 years, or within a time span of 10 years, or within 10 years. And also for percentages, like used by, so we have some words for 2 times or 3 times, like triple, double. You can just say 1/4, 3/4, half, double fold, treble. I'm going to explain all of these in the whiteboard video. Plus, here, if you have lower percentages, you can use this vocabulary, 4%. If it's a 4% of increase or decrease, you can say it's a tiny fraction. 24, 25, 24%, 23% is very near to a quarter, so you can just say nearly a quarter or almost a quarter. 25% is exactly a quarter. 26 is roughly 1/4. Okay, so over 50, 53, 54, you can say just over a half, and the rest are continuing like that. So there are proportions. So the proportions are also a good vocabulary for your line graph. 2% is a tiny proportion. Proportions actually used in the pie charts more than the line graphs, but it's better to know that and use them for line graphs as well. So for example, 16%, 10% is a small minority or small proportion, and 70, 80 is a significant majority or a very large proportion. All right, so I think that's enough for today. So please study these things. I will send you one more video on the whiteboard explaining the movements, and that's all for line graph. I will give you one more sample question. So please write that thing down after learning or watching the video and learn the material, especially the vocabulary. I'll see you a day after. Good night, bro.